Day 1. You wake up shivering beneath a thin wool blanket in a cramped, unheated apartment overlooking a gray Berlin street. The morning light filters through heavy blackout curtains that must remain tightly drawn under the strict threat of air raid wardens. You step onto the cold wooden floorboards, glancing at the peeling floral wallpaper that mocks the glorious promises of the regime. Wrapping a frayed knitted cardigan around your shoulders, you walk down the dimly lit staircase, echoing with the heavy footsteps of your neighbors. You push open the heavy oak door and step out into the crisp, foggy morning air of a heavily militarized capital city. Red banners with black swastikas hang proudly from every pristine stone building, contrasting sharply with the tired, anxious faces of the pedestrians hurrying past. The distant, rhythmic marching of soldiers on cobblestone streets serves as a constant, underlying heartbeat to this seemingly orderly society. Beneath the loudspeaker blaring triumphant military marches, you feel an unspoken tension vibrating through the orderly queues forming outside the local bakery. Day 2. You sit at a tiny wooden table in your kitchen, staring down at a meager breakfast of sawdust mixed bread and a cup of bitter acorn coffee. The radio in the corner excitedly announces glorious victories on the Eastern Front, masking the painful reality of your shrinking food rations. You gather your ration cards and heavily stamped employment papers before trudging toward the sprawling, soot-covered munitions factory on the edge of the city. Inside the massive brick warehouse, deafening machinery grinds endlessly as hundreds of exhausted workers assemble artillery shells under glaring industrial lights. You take your place at the oily assembly line, repeating the exact same mechanical motion alongside women whose husbands are fighting thousands of miles away. Armed guards in dark uniforms pace slowly along the elevated iron walkways above, ensuring that no one slows down or whispers subversive thoughts. The oppressive smell of grease and metallic dust fills your lungs as the grueling 12-hour shift drains every ounce of your physical energy. You walk home through the darkening streets, clutching your meager weekly wages while desperately trying not to draw any unwanted attention from patrolling authorities. Day 3. You stand in a painfully long, quiet line outside a half-empty grocery store, clutching a handful of colorful but nearly worthless ration coupons. The exhausted shopkeeper hands you a tiny portion of bruised potatoes and a suspicious gray sausage, apologizing quietly for the lack of real meat or butter. Leaving the official market, you slip down a narrow, shadowed alleyway where desperate citizens trade hidden valuables away from the watchful eyes of the secret police. You nervously exchange a silver family heirloom with a shady man in a trench coat for a small sack of real coffee beans and a block of soap. You hurry back to the safety of the main street, blending into the sea of gray-clad citizens pretending that everything is perfectly fine. Passing by the grandiose display windows of luxury shops restricted entirely to high-ranking officials, you feel the sharp bite of profound inequality. You finally return to your cold apartment, carefully locking the door behind you to savor the dangerous luxury of your smuggled coffee in absolute silence. Day 4. You find yourself sitting in a grand, velvet-lined movie theater surrounded by hundreds of citizens seeking a brief escape from the grinding reality of total war. Before the main feature begins, you are forced to watch a booming, highly polished newsreel showcasing smiling soldiers and supposedly invincible tanks rolling across foreign lands. You clap loudly along with the cheering audience, knowing perfectly well that secret informants are watching the crowd for anyone displaying a lack of enthusiasm. Later that evening, you walk through a bustling public square where a military brass band plays cheerful folk songs under the glow of bright string lights. You sip a watered-down beer at a crowded wooden table, carefully monitoring every single word you say to your supposedly loyal friends. A neighbor suddenly lowers their voice to whisper a rumor about devastating losses in Russia, causing a collective, terrified silence to fall over your table. You quickly change the subject to praise the recent architectural projects in the city center, offering a fake smile to a passing police officer. The festive music echoing through the plaza feels incredibly hollow as you realize that true relaxation is impossible in a society built entirely on paranoia and surveillance. Day 5. You wake up to the harsh reality of severe coal shortages, shivering as you wash your face with freezing water drawn from a sputtering rusty faucet. Because hot water is strictly rationed to only 2 days a week, you vigorously scrub your skin with a harsh, sand-filled substitute soap that barely lathers. You walk down the hall to the shared communal toilet, holding your breath against the lingering stench of poor plumbing and harsh chemical disinfectants. The porcelain basin is cracked and stained, reflecting the decaying state of civilian infrastructure cleverly hidden behind the regime's monumental stone facades. Venturing out into the neighborhood, you notice massive piles of uncleared rubble remaining from a recent bombing raid at the end of your block. Dust and ash continuously swirl through the chilly air, settling heavily onto the shoulders of your only decent winter coat. A team of exhausted foreign laborers in tattered uniforms silently shovels debris into a wooden cart, guarded closely by an armed soldier smoking a cigarette. You quickly cross the street to avoid the choking dust and the uncomfortable guilt, keeping your head down as you navigate the increasingly broken city. Day 6. You gather in a dimly lit basement cellar with your neighbors during a terrifying nighttime air raid. Huddled together as anti-aircraft guns boom above, an elderly woman next to you shares a precious piece of hard candy with a crying child, demonstrating a quiet, desperate kindness in the dark. You listen to the nervous prayers and comforting whispers circulating around the damp room, forging a deep, unspoken bond born of mutual survival. When the sirens finally wail the all-clear signal, you emerge back onto the street, coughing as you wipe thick plaster dust from your teary eyes. The morning light reveals a stark contrast as you walk past the untouched, heavily guarded villa of a local political leader just a few streets away. Chauffeurs furiously polish gleaming black sedans in the courtyard, completely insulated from the soot and suffering of the working-class districts. You silently share a knowing, bitter glance with a passing postman, acknowledging the massive chasm between the ruling elite and the common people bleeding for them. Despite the endless propaganda promising a united national community, you feel the sharp reality of a deeply fractured society struggling just to endure another week. Day 7. You stand on a bridge overlooking the dark waters of the river, reflecting on a grueling week defined by manufactured glory and hidden despair. The monumental architecture towering around you stands as a testament to absolute power. Yet the hollow eyes of the citizens tell a story of quiet starvation. You realize that this era was neither a cartoonish, villainous hellscape nor the prosperous utopia promised on the colorful recruitment posters. It was a chilling psychological trade-off where an entire nation sacrificed its personal freedom and moral compass in exchange for an illusion of security and collective pride. The machinery of war provided jobs and a twisted sense of purpose, but it ultimately extracted payment in the form of constant fear, surveillance, and eventual ruin. You take one last look at the blood-red banners flapping violently against the gray sky as the deafening wail of an air raid siren begins again. The haunting marching songs and the scent of burning coal fade rapidly into a blinding flash of bright white light. You are teleported back,